I know, I guess not.
I'll bring some WD-40 in for you, Kenny.
Right.
Hey, Kenny, it's your last night to get it in the budget. Just remember that.
Somebody hook me up.
Korea will.
Can I write on that?
We're passing. Mr. I'll check.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started here. Please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent, and council members ensure your microphones are turned on. All right, today is March 25th, 2024. It is a regular legislative meeting of Barberton City Council. Before we jump into the regular legislative meeting, we do have individual committee reports or committees. And we will start with City Properties, Parks and Recreation with Mr. Cheatham.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, now I'd like to bring the Parks and Recreation Committee to order. Today is March 25th, 2024. Time now is 6:06 p.m. And present are committee members, me as chairman, Rebecca Gerhardt, Jennifer Hager, and Justin Greer. We have no requested legislation at this time. And we do have an appointment set for a vote this evening, and that is Ms. Cynthia Sutton for a 5-year term beginning immediately and ending 12/31/2028. Miscellaneous discussion. On March 14th, we had a committee meeting for the Parks and Recreation, and I just had a few bullet points that I wanted to talk about from that meeting. Mayor Judge came in and gave a wonderful presentation on the update to College Park, and can't wait to see the finishing results of that update that was given. They also discussed the Bob Kerska Memorial, and they're looking at the Foundation Park naming 4 of the ball fields after him in his honor. Ballpark 1, Kerska Ballpark 1, up to 4. And I thought that was a wonderful idea. For you that didn't know, Bob Kerska, he was an awesome employee for the city of Barberton for years that was tragically killed in a accident at work. Then last that I have, park cameras are 70% complete in the parks, and they're going to work on getting that to 100%. At this time, I'd like to open up for discussion to the committee. Anything?
Do you want me to list a couple of things they talked about?
Oh, yes, please
Okay.
do.
They are not doing any activities April 8th because of the eclipse, and they're going to filter people to Tusk or the ball fields for viewing. If you all look in your Barberton Parks and Recreation 2024 program guide, you can find information about Take Pride in Barberton, and they're encouraging people to sign up for that. And that's, April 13th at 9 a.m. Rain or shine, I believe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything from the committee? From the body? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Are there plans on paper for any improvements or anything at College Park yet?
Yes.
I can answer a little bit more. So there's some initial thoughts and ideas on paper, and I can show you after council. We're getting quotes on fencing and things like that. But basically, the thing is, first, on Snyder Avenue is to narrow the lanes to create more of a slower traffic pattern. Change all the fencing that's there. So on Snyder Avenue, increase the size of the fence there. On College Avenue, move the fence in 5 to 6 feet and put in a parking lot, new parking. The recreational equipment has been, from the fire, the insurance has been received, or it's in the process of being received, and then putting in some pavilions. We've talked about, it wasn't on the diagram that I took to the Parks Commission, but on the inside of the fence line, having a small walking trail on the perimeter of the inside. We also acquired 2 vacant lots to the south, so tearing that fence down and extending that fence, so there's more room to do things in the back of the park. So still working on it, and that would have to go through the proper channels of being approved by Parks Commission and the Planning Commission and the City Council on a lot of that. So
Thank you.
Any more discussion from the body? From the gallery? If not, I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, moved in second. We are adjourned at 6:11 p.m.
thank you, Mr. Cheatham.
Next up is Public Welfare and Safety, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to bring the Public Welfare and Safety Committee to order. It's Monday, March 25th, 2024. We're here in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Mr. Cheatham, Ms. Gerhart, and Mr. Greer. All other council members and others are noted on my sheet. We have no new legislation, no pending legislation, and I'll open it up for miscellaneous discussion if we have any from my committee. Any other council members? The body? The gallery? Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
A second. We are adjourned at 6:12 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Next up is Rules Marketing and Development with Ms. Gerhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to bring the Rules Marketing and Development Committee to order. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024, and the time is 6:12 p.m. We are in council chambers. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Mrs. Beck, Mr. Heidick, and President Greer. All other members and others as noted on my sheet. I have no new requests for legislation at this time. I have nothing pending at this time. As you've all heard the discussions and questions about the various economic development pieces that are at work in the city, I thought we could start inviting them in to share more about who they are and what they're doing for the city. Tonight, I've asked Melanie Black-Amato to join us. She is with Main Street Barberton. Melanie has been hard at work inventorying our downtown area, seeking out new business to come to Barberton, hosting monthly small business meetings, which I've thoroughly enjoyed, as well as a million other things that I'm sure she's going to share with us tonight. Thanks, Melanie.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhart. So what you have in front of you, or should have being passed around right now, are some of the initiatives that Main Street Barberton is implementing. First, I'm just going to go over, so I assume most of you know my role. My role is to revitalize the downtown Barberton. And some of the materials that you have in front of you right now, if you want to take a look at the Dora flyer, that is the flyer that explains Dora in downtown Barberton and also the boundaries. That was created, again, to educate the community so they understand the DORA process. And you'll also see the DORA sticker, which shows whether or not a business is allowed to have alcohol inside of it, or chooses to have alcohol inside of it or not. So those are something that Main Street Barberton created as well. On the boundaries, we also wanted to list the parking, because I think what I hear is that people are confused about where to park at for events in downtown, so you'll see the parking listed on there as well. Also, with regards to events, so Main Street Barberton is creating an event each month. Starting with April, we're going to be having reoccurring events. The April one is being passed around. It's going to be a treasure hunt, and that's implementing local businesses in the community, and then having a day for families to come out and enjoy the downtown. We also have the Arts and Music Festival, which is going to be an annual event that we are planning. So we're excited to have our first one. We plan to have between 30 and 45 bands present that day. So we're excited of implementing that, and also focusing on the arts district that we have. As you'll see in there too, we also have the paint and sips that we offer every month through the winter, fall, spring. Those have been very successful, serving over 130 individuals in 2023. And of those, on average, about 40% were not from Barberton. So they were visitors to Barberton to strictly come to the sip and paint. Marketing, so you're going to see in your packet as well, there's table tents. Those table tents are being distributed all throughout downtown and beyond. Our goal is to basically have every business that serves customers have that table tent present so they can draw people downtown and make them aware of what's happening. Those table tents have a QR code on them, which goes to our downtown, or goes to our website. It's also going to take you to our events page, which shows you everything happening. And so if you look up on your screen, you can see the events page up there. So at any given day, you can see what's happening. You want to scroll, let's go ahead and scroll up a little bit just so you can see what month is this, April?
March.
Okay,
April
March.
wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's that's what you can see what's happening downtown at any given day, and this is a conglomeration of all of the businesses that are represented downtown. So any events that we're hosting as well are going to be posted up there. Along with the table tents, you'll see the business cards. They're little. Also has a QR code on it. The purpose of those, again, are to pass out and distribute, so people have that QR code to click on and go to our website, which is going to, again, take them to all the businesses that are downtown, and then all the events that are downtown. It also takes you to the Dora, and it also takes you to a page if you're interested in opening a small business, how to go about doing that in the city of Barberton. I talked briefly about our website. We do highlight all of the businesses in downtown as well to bring light to them. And then we also hold monthly small business meetings, which is geared towards educating all of the small businesses so they are empowered to do better and be better in our downtown. So, for example, last month we had SCORE out. We plan on having Bounce. We plan on having the Small Business Development Center come out and do a presentation. And we've done presentations also on the financial resources that are available, the grants that are available, both through the city and also through the community foundation. So again, just trying to empower the existing businesses that we have downtown. We also offer a monthly newsletter as well. That newsletter goes out to anyone who is registered with Main Street Barberton. We have over 500 individuals registered on that right now and hope to expand that. But that just tells you a little bit about the monthly events that are happening. And again, we feature a business every month as well. And all of these things that I shared with you today are on our website. I just printed copies of them so you could actually see physical copies of everything. To date, we have brought in 3 new businesses to downtown. We have 2 more pending, and so we're making strides on bringing new business into the downtown community.
Awesome. Do we have any questions for Melanie? You did such a wonderful job explaining it. We don't have a single question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any miscellaneous conversation? From the gallery? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:18.
You're
welcome.
Next up is City Utilities with Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to call this meeting to order today, March 25th. We're in council chambers. The time is 6:19. All members of my committee are present, myself as chair, Jennifer Hager, Emily Beck, and Justin Greer, and all others noted. Tonight, we have several pieces of legislation to call for. First, we have a request from Dennis Weaver, Utilities Director, to authorize a project cost increase for WWTP Phase 3B and 3C projects in the amount of $187,934.46 to change to the value of the project cost for $7,285,878.54 to $7,473,813. The emergency wording is requested, and we're going to have Mr. Weaver discuss this for us.
All right, thank you. The value change is happening to close out this portion of the project. There were 3 change orders to wrap up the end. One of those change orders, number 6, was actually already approved by council back in September and has had board control. And the material was purchased, and that's why that's partially paid too. It's not installed yet. So we're, but this is wrapping up. We intended to use the Ohio Build grant to pay for these 3. However, we're not permitted under their rules. That was not clear when they gave us the grant, in fact, what all could be paid with it. So I'm going to take this from the capital funds of sewer and also in water. The 119 is for a water project. It's a water fill station. It wasn't in the original contract, so that will be, we can pull that from there. But the funds will be available when that budget passes for that.
So this is part of the budget for that. This is part of the budget.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Do we have any discussion from the gallery, council, or anyone? Okay, Mr. Weaver, while you're still there, we have a request from you, Utilities Director, to authorize an ordinance to change orders 3, 6, and 7 from the WWTP Phase 3B and 3C projects in the amount of $187,934.46. The emergency order requested. So that would be the same.
What we're doing now is approving the change orders.
You're approving the change.
Right, and as I said, one of them is already approved, but we need the money for it, so I just included it with this request. But it also, it includes change order 3 and 7.
Okay.
And I gave quite a bit of information on that as far as the, what the change orders were, and if there's any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer.
If we don't have any questions, do I have a motion to call for this?
Need a motion for the first one first. Need a motion for the first one first.
I have a motion, yeah, for the first one, for the request.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, now for the second request. Do we have a motion for that one?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
You have a second? Motion vote, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Thank you. And number C, we have a letter from Michael Theodaki, City Engineer, requesting legislation authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Marks Construction for Snyder Avenue Stream Restoration and Flood Mitigation Project in the amount of $316,934.70. The emergency word requested. Mr. Theodaki, would you like to give a little bit on that one before we make a motion?
Sure. We opened bids last week for this project. project is under the engineer's estimate. It's for a great stream restoration project in by Snyder and First Avenue, and we'd like to get started on that this year. So any questions related to that?
Okay, thank you, Mike. We have a motion to call for this piece of legislation.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, second.
Second, I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have pending legislation that we'll be voting on tonight, ordinance number 29-2024, presented by Mr. Griffin, title enter into contract, Hydrostop LLC, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of this or its designee to enter into a contract with Hydrostop LLC in the amount of $108,518.83 for the procurement of valve insertion equipment and declaring that emergency. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion on that one? We'll be voting for that, so that's already happened. Do we have any more remarks, anything for utilities? Yes, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let Director Weaver, Mr. Weaver, know that I appreciate the in-depth, detailed report that he gave.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Beck.
I'll second.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:26. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Last but not least, Finance and Personnel with Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. It is Monday, March 25th, 2024, 6:26 p.m. here in Council Chambers. All members of my committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mr. Heidig, Mr. Griffin, and President Greer. All other council members are also present, as well as guests as noted on my sheet. For requested legislation, we reserve that for Committee of the Whole nights, so that will be next week. For pending, we've got ordinance number 14-2024, the 2024 operating and capital budget. Are there any more questions or remarks regarding the budget? Yes.
I might have had a couple. Do we want to talk about them now?
Fine by me.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate your couple of questions that you had.
No problem.
So we're going to triple team this. Not every department head is here, so I appreciate the questions, but we may not get to all of them. But I'm going to have the finance director and the service director come up as well. We've been working on this stuff today, and so we go through this kind of
Okay.
line by line here. I did get a copy. The parking director did respond, but he's unable to be here this evening.
Okay.
So,
There's a microphone right here. Jump up when you need me.
So, first question, page 72, capital outlay. This is for parks, improvements other than buildings, $60,000. Where does this go towards? He does have this broken out by cost, but we want to heat the restrooms. You know, with the change in the climate, we've noticed, the restrooms are closed because we used to close them and open them on certain dates, not before or after. And so it could get to 60 degrees during the day where families are out, need to use the restroom, but then at night it's getting down to 20. So we want to make sure that there's heat in the restrooms. Wind screens for the new pickleball courts at Edgewood and Tusk. Replace the broken fountain at Lake Anna, which is a big one, and cameras at Waltz Park, which would, I'm not sure if that completes the project, but it would definitely complete it there at Waltz Park.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you have any more.
No, you did a good job.
Next question, page 73, senior center salaries doubled from last year. Yes, this was done from, we had a part-time employee and mainly works the front desk, and they were transferred from one account to another.
Okay.
You had asked about program supplies, $37 for the fitness equipment. They currently have 2 treadmills, a bike, an elliptical, and a few dumbbells. They have 350 members in the Active Adult Center. Next, you had questioned the cleaning supplies. It tripled in 2021. The cleaning supplies were always about, or the cleaning process was always about $20,000. Going back to 2016, cost was reduced during 2020, just over $6,700. Due to COVID, the center was closed a lot, so no need to clean it. So the expenses didn't increase after that time period. It just went back to where it was.
So it's just because we can't see past 2020, we wouldn't have seen that that was the day. Okay, thank you.
No, that's a good question. Page 74, park play program. Summer playground wages, $25,000. Was the program supply cost for park play program. So what the Parks Director wrote was, we plan on bringing back the park play program. Summer playground wages covers the recreation seasonals to run the day at the parks program, stand-up paddleboard rentals, working concerts, and working summer special events. The day at the park program will have 2 base locations. This will be at Tuscarora Park and Webb Park. I think you had asked that which parks would include.
Did you say Everly Webb?
Yes, and Tuscarora. Goal for the park play program is to get the kids in the parks and engaging in outdoor games and activities in the parks. Supplies cost for the outdoor sports play equipment, balls, disc golf, etc. Just over $4,100 for the parks to purchase. Craft supplies were provided with already owned items from parks and some donated items. So those are the 2 main parks, but I know they try to float around and they kind of take attendance at who's at what parks. It's vastly different than when I was a kid.
Yeah. So with that one being new this year, was he willing to come and give updates, like once it's underway, what they ended up doing and how many are coming and everything?
Yep.
Okay.
And they keep stats on how many kids came and kind of what they did and
Yeah.
all that. So,
Yeah, just so we understand it more moving forward. Thank you.
If you remember, kind of during COVID, the schools had a great program throughout the summertime, but it kind of had messed up what we were doing, right? Kind of ruined what we were doing with our program.
Okay.
Because everything was free through the schools, right?
Yes.
So that has ended, so hopefully there's a resurgence of kids in the parks.
Okay. I remember him saying the schools had ended and that this was why this was kind of getting
Yeah.
picked up. Okay. Still on that same page, 74.
So the next question was on page 74, OPERS. On this page, it was thought to be a typo. It is a typo. If you want, we can change the sheet. It would amend the whole budget ordinance, so you guys would have to amend it on the fly. Or you could do nothing with it. It's in personnel services, so it can only be used for personnel services, so it would have to be used for wages or OPERS or health and life or gym membership reimbursement, clothing reimbursement, because there is, I think, 1 parks employee that is eligible for clothing reimbursement. So I mean, it's very restricted on what it would be able to be used for. So yes, it can be fixed, but fixing it is going to entail a lot of other work that is, if it was operations and maintenance, I would say otherwise, but being in personnel service, if we don't use it, it just goes back into the general fund for next year to be used for next year, so.
So would that be like up to finance? If you want to just leave it or amend it? Okay. Then we'll let Taylor decide what she wants to do with that.
All right, so the next one I think is mine. So that's on page 75, capital outlay. So it's improvements other than buildings. It's 25,000. So what that is actually going to be used for is we're looking at sealing the parking lot at Foundation Fields. So I believe page 75 is Foundation Fields. So we're looking at sealing the parking lot and then finishing the walkway. So if you go and walk on the walkway, you'll see that majority of it's done. It's been sealed. The rest of it needs finished. So that's what that expense is. And then I think the next one is Jeremy's again.
So on page 103, revenue charges for services, questioning about why it was so low. It was stated that the money was going in the wrong account. How does that get corrected when money goes into the wrong account? A lot of it depends on timing. If it's something within the same year, I can easily reclassify it through a journal entry to get the money moved to the correct accounts. If it's something from a previous year, a little bit more work, I would have to come to council to transfer money to get that money moved. But a lot of it also depends on the materiality of it. If we're talking about like $100, $200, maybe $1,000 or something, we're probably not going to mess with transferring that money if it's a small amount. If it's significant, that would have a major impact on the books and how we're presenting our financial statements, I would definitely be coming to you guys to transfer that money at that point in time.
Okay. I think that was like general one, just happened that we had an example. Okay.
Let me take the next
All
one.
right, next is page 103/104, revenue and expenses for the sports complex. Expenses have been more because of improvements to the complex. So this goes down to another question as well. The Ventrac machine that helps the ball fields, they purchased that in '22. The walking trail, resurfacing that, the storage barn. We are limited on groups that can have service at the complex. The current layout is made for 10-year-olds. So if you charge what you should for like a men's league or a women's league, you may not get the cream of the crop leagues because the fields are too small.
Oh.
Basically what he's talking about. At some point, we need to make major upgrades to the fencing and backstops to the complex so we can attract more groups. Backstops are currently low. They cause problems with foul balls and parking. Fencing around the fields are currently 3 feet high and need to be 8 feet tall.
And as far as opportunities to sell advertisements, Jeremy and I spoke on the phone today, and we actually had a pretty long conversation about sponsorships. Don does have an entire sponsorship program, and it goes for Mumfest, it goes for the complex, it goes for other parks and stuff like that too. So those are opportunities that probably just need to be marketed a little bit more so that people know that there's something that, hey, I can become a sponsor, at the field. So that's something that moving forward that we definitely should put a little more focus on to try to help with that revenue.
What was that machine? What does that do?
So the Ventrac actually, what doesn't it do? So I mean, it's one of those things where they sell many attachments. It'll stump grind. It'll do ball field prep. It'll rototill. It'll brush hog. It'll mow.
Wow.
I mean, you name it, it'll do it.
Okay.
Now I don't know exactly what all attachments we have, but it was purchased to do field maintenance. Is what it was done. And again, so page 104. So your very next question, what was the big jump in repair and maintenance? So I mean, a lot of that was walking trails, vent track, and other upgrades at the park.
What upgrades have we done?
I mean, ball field mix. It wasn't that long ago. I mean, we did some
batter boxes with clay.
Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what the jump was there either.
We've got the LED lights there now too, right?
Lighting,
Last year.
yeah, lighting, that was done too.
Yeah.
Was that last year or the year before?
It was last year. Let's see.
Page 112.
Yep. So page 112. So what page 112 is that the special program wages. So that includes stand-up paddleboarding. So those wages are And I had Jeremy look and see what funds and who was paid out of those funds. And it was several of our seasonal employees that taught stand-up paddleboard, that did Play in a Park program, and that kind of stuff last year. So it would be budgeted for that same type of programming. And Don's trying to add some more of that this year. Page 130. So donation expenditure. So I believe page 130 was all revenue, if I remember correctly. So there actually isn't a donation expenditure. So I'm not real sure what you meant by that question, Rebecca.
Well, I'm reading my sheet again. Hold on a minute.
Okay.
I think I was just curious, like, what the donations were, like, even though it was revenue, like, what that looked like.
So, I mean, that's,
31.
so my understanding is again, that donation sheet, so Don's combined it to where we can do, it's sponsorships is what it is, and Tammy reaches out to everybody that's donated every year to MumFest, and so that is how that revenue's generated, is through donation process, that Tammy reaches out to the same people every year.
That could be
Okay,
for flower beds throughout the city, companies, individuals,
okay, okay,
money generated at the Mum Festival.
okay. And then, if you flip your page, Todd,
131.
that one that says donation expenditures, so do we then make donations to people?
We won't be making donations to people. That
So
donation,
is the,
donation expenditure is probably the, I can't speak on behalf of parks, but more than likely, when people do donate for like the flower beds to clean those up, so if they donate $500 to clean up this flower bed, we're using that $500 in donation expenditures to clean that flower bed up. Like if we need new dirt or flowers or mulch or,
Okay, we have to provide the stuff that goes into the flower bed.
yeah, we have to go buy the material. So
That makes
they'll
sense.
donate the money to us, we'll go get the material and put it down for them, so. that
Okay.
way They're comfortable about it.
Gotcha.
and then page 130, 131, the next question, do these pages show revenue versus cost of Mum Festival? Again, so that's the revenues on page 130, which would be, the MumFest donations in the MumFest Square. So there's $80,000 worth of revenue there for MumFest. And then the expenditures is shown in Mum Celebration, which is approximately 40,000, but budgetary 40,000.
Okay,
Okay.
that's how I kind of read it, but then I wasn't positive I was reading that right. Okay.
Where do we see the senior citizen memberships?
So the senior center memberships, that's on page 175, back in Fund 734. It's the Senior Center Trust Fund. Kind of, with it, why there's no, I don't think, dedicated line item that says memberships. I think it's in like the newsletter fee or something, one of those lines, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, the newsletter fees, like what we bring in, okay.
And then moving on to the building department questions, so Jeremy's gonna tackle the first couple there.
Did anybody have Parks and Rec before we move away from that?
I just wanted to make a comment about that, actually. I remember being a kid when Waltz Park still had a pool, and we had the Park Play program. We got T-shirts. Like, that was like a highlight of my childhood, so I'm so happy that they're bringing that back.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be great. I think Edgewood needs to be looked at. I was kind of surprised that that was not on the list. But I think that'll be great for the kids.
I was very surprised to hear Edgewood was not on the list.
I think they're gonna still float around.
Yeah.
Do the two staples.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right, so is page 40 and 41, does the collection of certain licenses and permits go towards the building department? Which ones are we able to tell what is brought in from businesses and construction in Barberton versus Norton? If so, would we please provide that? So, the money that's collected there, almost all those licenses and permits are all building department. The only line item that isn't building department is the skill-based gaming machines. Those are the only ones that don't filter through the building department. I'm not sure if this is planning or HR handle that. The skilled gaming machines. Yeah, so it's the safety HR department handles the skill, but all those other licenses and permits in there are all building department. So when you're saying does it go towards the building department, yes, because you have the building department, some of building department paid out of the general fund. So part of that revenue that they're generating is going towards operating their department. Now being able to tell which ones are from Barberton versus Norton, we would have to ask the building department for a report of that nature. The budget won't, unless I add a bunch more line items, which there's plenty of line items already in the budget. Can be done, but no, in the budget, we don't track it.
They do have to provide to the state a breakdown of all the revenue that comes in, because the state gets a piece of the actual
Okay.
residential and commercial, and they separate out Barberton versus Norton.
So yeah, the building department would be the best to be able to provide that information. So then the next question is, why is the projected revenue lower than last year, even though last year we went over? I always budget conservatively. I will always do that. Not only that, I did speak with the building commissioner when I was working on the budget prep. It was September, October sometime. I was talking to him, and he was saying that not as many big projects are going to be, like all the housing developments that have been starting to pop up everywhere, those are starting to slow down. So the revenues probably aren't going to keep up. I mean, 2020 you had the spike because everyone was getting the government money and they were spending it on their houses.
Right.
That carried from 2021, and then 22, 23, you start having all these housing developments start taking off in Barberton and Norton. So we were seeing all of the fees and permits from those. All that's starting to slow down. I mean, they almost have, I can't speak on behalf of Norton, but I think they got a lot of that at Brookside built out. So a lot of that permits are done. Slate Ridge up there in Austin Estates, I think almost all those permits are already, or all those houses are almost up.
Okay.
Or they're not houses, but townhomes. And so, yeah, New Haven, the second phase of New Haven is basically built out. I think they're, on the third phase of that, starting that. So, I mean, really not too many things going on. Maybe the next big one is if Tradition Farms keeps proceeding, that would be the next big housing allotment that I know of. So, I mean, if that was starting this year, then, yeah, we could bump those up a little bit, but.
And almost like cleaning, if we were seeing before all the new housing developments, we probably would have even seen different numbers without those. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you for explaining that again.
Next question is page 70. What is the professional services line used for? So that's in the building and engineering funds. So that is for our third-party inspections, so plumbing inspector, electrical inspector, and then a lot of our commercial plans review. Because that's all done through a private firm. And as you can see, last year we over budgeted, but it's one of those funds where if the housing blows up and we have to have all this plan review done and inspections done, we want to make sure that we're covered. So we did reduce what we budgeted this year compared to last year. The building demolitions on this page, it says, I believe we have in other budgets, so I was just wondering what these ones are. So these demolitions are actually, so it would be emergency condemnations and stuff that has to happen right now. So if there was a major fire and something had to come down right away. Those demolitions, we have to have demolition money so that our CBO can act the proper way and complete those when necessary.
Whereas planning is a little bit.
So planning has, typically you have a little more time to plan and get that kind of stuff done. And then, so what is the advertising? So the advertising is our legal ads and any public notices. So BZBA, all of that's done through the building department. So anytime that somebody applies for a variance, we have to put a public notice in the paper or do mailings to adjoining or adjacent properties. That comes out of the advertising. Materials went up. Is there anything particular planned? No, there's nothing really in particular planned. It's just trying to cover increasing costs, knowing that, you know, vacant property and rental registration requires extra materials, printing out invoices, that kind of thing. So we were just looking at a rising costs. Capital outlay, so equipment furnishings. So we put a little bit of money in there to budget for vehicle. I know 15,000 seems a little low, but you know, we're frugal and like to shop around.
You only need like a little.
So it would be for the building department for inspections.
One of the inspectors could use it then?
Yeah. Inspector, yeah, CBO.
I'll get a little Civic with that.
Yeah. Let's see, so page 121, I believe, is the next. It says, does the revenue from rental registration and inspections go to the building department or into the general fund? Same question for vacant property. So with those funds, the money, the revenue generated actually stays in that fund to be used for program expenditures inside of that fund. It can be used for certain things, again, so capital improvements like a vehicle that's used for our inspectors that are in the areas doing inspections for rental registration and vacant properties. It can be used for expenditures, for mailings and stuff like that also.
I do have a question.
Yes.
Really quick. It didn't hit me until after we had done this. The paint rebate program, is that only for landlords, or in a lot of cases landlords allow their tenants to paint themselves? Would tenants be able to apply for that?
So she actually asking two questions.
Sorry.
No, we're getting there, but
Okay.
we'll just bump it up.
Moving on, so I wanted to.
No. So let me, let's see. Yeah. So I'm just going to go in order because I know in the next question. So the very next, what is an example of rental registration expenditure? I kind of actually covered that. So invoicing, printing invoicing, mailings, web service. So we do collect rental registration via online portal now. So, I mean, there are expenses with that. And then the next question is on the paint rebate program. She says, do we have a similar program for homeowners? So it is available for anyone that paints the exterior of their home. We require before and after. Jeremy and I actually discussed that. So our application process requires a before and after photo. And then all the details, address, property, again, owner occupied or rental, and then we require a receipt to receive that rebate.
And Todd, doesn't it say that the homeowner has to?
The application does say homeowner,
So
so really it would be the landlord would be the one.
So
But the tenant could paint, but the landlord would be the one that have to apply.
Yes.
Got you. And it was, what was it, up to 10 gallons, $10 a piece?
$10 a gallon, up to 10
We're
gallons,
looking
yes.
at increasing that, though, since paint has gone
This
up.
paint is outrageous. Do you know when you increased that? Like, do you have like
No, we're discussing that now.
okay,
But I don't have a date.
yeah. You know, it's kind of these things we can say to our people, like, hey, there's a program here.
Yeah.
So if I don't know what it is, I look stupid talking about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'll do it as quickly as we can.
Gotcha.
And you're up, Mayor.
Which one are you on there?
So, the residential home rehabilitation.
Okay. Do we have a similar program for homeowners or just for rentals? So it's all comes out the same?
Okay.
Is that regards to paint rebate?
No, this is the residential home
The
rehabilitation
last
program.
line.
Oh, yeah, well, for both.
So it's available to anybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, we've got two line items there. We've got the city rebate program and residential home rehabilitation program. When we partner with other organizations, there's times when they have programs that there's a match from the city, or maybe there's a match for the program. Summit County Health Department has a lead abatement program. And Pete, you can help me, I believe they just changed the rules not too long ago. You can do rental units where we previously couldn't. So as their programs change, we want to be able to make sure we have some funding to help residents as well. But also, as I mentioned before, we work with our building department if there's a great need for downspouts and gutters. You know, if we put together a program, the goal is to fix the property up, right? So if we can help out in any way, since they're paying into this fund, you know, we want to have something set aside.
Okay. Okay. So the city rebate one is only if it's like a landlord and rental, and then the residential home and the paint are for anybody.
Well, either one could be for anyone. So the regulation has to be used for, to better the neighborhood.
Okay.
And does that take us down to the planning department questions?
Unless anybody has a question for building?
It's getting closer.
You guys are doing great. I appreciate this. Thank you.
All right? Did you get a chance to look at these?
No, I didn't actually. I'll come up and help and do my best.
Yeah,
We'll put you on the spot.
You're on the spot. You got this.
So the first one is page 76, about overtime. And I believe that overtime is not always inherent in the positions in the planning department like they are in police or fire or other departments. So I believe there's a separate line item for overtime just to track it. I believe that's what it is.
That's correct.
I liked it. I didn't notice it anywhere else. I liked it.
It doesn't always have to be used, but yeah, we just try and keep it separate, just to really keep tabs on it for when it needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so regarding the master plan, citywide branding, and Newell Street project, yes, we can absolutely. I mean, we always do our best to just keep council apprised of what's going on and where we are in the process as best we can, because that gives you opportunity to give us feedback as we're moving forward. That way, we're not waiting till the very end and surprising you with anything. So yes, as we move forward and start doing these projects, we will absolutely keep you in the loop.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so for the community development administrator, we revamped that position and actually brought back a position of the assistant planning director. We had a kind of a rotating group of people doing the CDBG process because it is a kind of a difficult and cumbersome program to deal with. So we wanted to bring someone in who would have a little bit more expertise as an assistant director, who could take that authority on a little bit more. And then historically in the past, we've kind of got in a rut of doing the same thing over and over again, and not necessarily using the money as effectively as possible. So we wanted to also get someone who would maybe have a little bit more vision, a little bit more planning background to help kind of take that program and utilize it a little bit better than we had been in the past. Not that it had been used improperly by any means, but there was a lot more potential that we weren't tapping into quite yet.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Is there anything like this project that works for other areas outside the downtown? So the question, I guess, is there anything like this project in the works for areas outside the downtown? Is that specific to like the rebranding? Is that?
Well, I know it was on that line item, art and entertainment district. So that's really focused in the downtown.
So those funds are focused in the downtown. Part of that pot of money, though, we did apply for an R-Town grant, which would be a citywide public art master plan. So we would probably use some of those funds to help pay for the creation of our local match for that plan, and that would benefit the city as a whole.
Okay.
So last year, Main Street was paid for out of, similar to this year, professional services and the gas and oil royalty fund, economic development line item.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
So similar to this year, the Main Street is being paid for out of the professional services line item of the planning budget.
Yes.
And also $10,000 off of, out of the gas and oil royalty fund. There's a line item for economic development.
Okay. So that's what paid for Main Street last year?
Part of, yeah, those two.
Okay.
So this year you're taking it out of we were told that Arts and Entertainment District, 40 grand of that 175 was coming out. Now you're saying it's coming out of the professional services?
No, that was last year.
That's last year.
Okay.
I figured it hadn't come out of this one because you didn't spend 40,000.
I mean, realistically, it can come out of either one, professional services or arts and entertainment.
Yeah.
So if there's no more questions in the planning section, we'll move on to the miscellaneous questions. So the first one was general observations. Some of the budget line items are blank from 2020 to now. Do we keep them on for a certain amount of time? Does it have a purpose? Is it hard to take them off? Not hard to take them off.
No, is it hard to get them back on if you do?
No.
Okay.
I can hide the Excel row if I wanted to. Just kind of keep them there because we used them in the past. So maybe just because we haven't used them in the past 5 years, what's to say we want to start using that line item again?
Sure.
So instead of unhiding and hiding and constantly doing the flip-flop, and then we're then adding, maybe someone doesn't realize a row is hidden, now we're adding another row and it's already there. So instead of doing the unhiding, hiding game, just keep them there.
Oh, that's fine.
And don't worry, we'll see how it all changes if council approves my legislation I have in front of you. You may not see that anymore, so we'll see, we'll see.
We can hide our own line items with the cloud.
All right, concerning Insight Consulting, Retzel Consulting, and Retzel and Andrus, in terms of economic development, they come out of the planning department. If the law department uses Retzel and Andrus for their services, then it comes out of the law department fund.
Okay.
So who's using Retzel Consulting? You?
The planning department.
Okay. Okay.
So Retzel and Insight both come out of economic development and planning. Okay.
That's part of the 215,000 that you have budgeted there, right?
Professional services.
Yeah.
I have a note on here that says extra projects from when we presented that night.
What page are you on?
Under that professional services on 177, that 215. I don't remember what that meant. Do you remember what that
There
meant?
could be extra projects that are kind of outside of the scope of the agreement that we have with them.
Outside of Retzel and
You said for professional?
professional services.
Yeah, it was Insight, Retzel, and the extra projects like master plan, citywide rebranding, Newell Street, and a TID.
Okay. Thank you. So master
Master plan,
plan.
citywide rebranding,
Okay.
Newell Street,
Yeah.
TID.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Now, your next question is dealing with the capital budget. Mr. Flaker will take that as, it's on page 18.
So yeah, page 18, that's going to be like a complete overview of capital outlays for the whole budget workbook. It was as saying that land is very high, like the cost of that is very high this year. Is there a plan with it? I would have to take a look at each individual formula, like each cell that consists of that formula. But it's all in the budget workbook.
Okay.
So the various specific department budgets that we went over, various funds, it's all in there. There could be, maybe there is a cell, because some of these formulas probably have about 75, it's referencing like 75 different cells. So
Okay.
maybe there is a cell, maybe a little out of whack, maybe it's picking up like a vehicle line instead of a landline. So it could happen. So that's probably, so land is very, so is there a plan? Like I said, it's probably been discussed in all these department
Sure.
heads presenting to council.
So it's just when you see it all together, it seems big.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so, and then buildings was way under budget last year. Is there a plan? more than likely that, well, the land probably up high this year because of that $6 million that is appropriated in the general fund of that lost revenue money. So that's probably why land is up very high.
That is,
Building
okay.
was way under budget last year. Are there plans for this? Like I said, I would have to look at each individual cell in that formula to
Okay.
take a look of why and what that all consists of. But once again, it's very high level, whole budget workbook. So enterprise fund, general fund, special revenue funds, all that, all into
Okay.
those pages right there. Can you explain what elections are on page 60? So that is the elections that are held every March,
You want to explain that?
every November. If they want special elections
I
in
guess-
between, so.
Like, just an average person, I just thought the Board of Election puts up their tables and we have, I didn't know there was costs.
When we put it to the ballot and the voters elected to move the primary from September to May or March, depending on if it's a presidential year, that September primary, Barberton was the only one using a September primary. So we were on the hook for 100% of the cost, which at that time, we were shelling out $60,000 every 2 years. So by moving it and being in the May primary, we already pay a fair share of it, split through everybody in the county.
Because everybody else is having their primary.
Right, so
Okay.
by the voters electing to eliminate that, every 2 years, we saved $120,000.
Wow.
just
Okay.
For the same sake of it, but we still have to pay for May and November.
So we
But we're-
like pay the county
Yes.
for the election? Okay.
Yeah, so what happens there is when we receive our property tax, we receive the net of it, not the gross. So the county will withhold various things, health district elections, I forget some of the other ones. Those are the two big ones. They withhold some of our money to pay for those services.
Okay.
But for me, for bookkeeping purposes, I have to record the revenue as gross and then record those expenditures. So that's why we have the line
Okay.
item for elections.
Okay. I should have known that nothing in government's free,
Especially when it's another government charging.
right?
You want to handle the next one?
The capital outlay, equipment and furnishings, similar to what Jeremy said, Mr. Flaker said, excuse me, with the other ones. This is a snapshot of all the equipment and furnishings. So we'd have to break that apart.
Page 71, that's going to be a specific department.
That's the
I don't have my
signal.
spreadsheet up, so I don't
That's
have
signal.
the pages.
It's signalized intersections.
Before we go past page 60 though, what was the Summit County Health District? What's that?
What's that?
What would you use to have?
It was
Yeah, I said,
2
you know what
under
page?
elections
13.
on page 60.
No, so that pays for, if we need assistance through the health department. We've had issues where we call them up, they come out, they help, they provide a service, and so that pays for it. So
Okay.
they've got a calculation that they give us each year of what we would owe the next year.
Okay. I'm sorry, Todd.
That's okay.
Back to
Sorry about
71.
that.
No, page 71, capital outlay, so equipment furnishings. So that's part of the, so we use two funds to deal with our signalized intersections. So this is the signal fund. So there's a portion of signals that comes out of signal fund, and then there's a portion of that comes out of the lighting fund, because the lighting fund cannot be used for all anything safety related due to lighting. So this is also going to help pay for those signalized intersections that I sent a priority list to everybody the other day.
Those camera signals?
Yep. So, yeah, so we're looking at doing some major upgrades.
When do you expect that to happen?
I mean, as soon as the budget passes, we're going to start upgrading the certain intersections. And again, working with Ronnie Eagle, we're going to let him kind of prioritize, because he's been working on them for years, and he knows which ones are are at that point that we need to focus on them. And like I said, we've done two, I believe it's two intersections. Robinson and Fifth was done. I believe we have at least 2 lanes that are camera controlled up there, and then Shannon 31st, I think, we have one we got eliminated a loop because there was a bad loop over there that we have camera controlled already. So.
Okay.
All right, then, the next question is on page 120. Can we go over this page? That page is going to be the emergency reserve fund for the city of Barberton. So that is a fund where if we have some leftover money in income tax that we want to set aside for kind of like a rainy day fund.
Okay.
If there is an economic downturn in the city,
Okay.
we can kind of go to that fund there to help the general fund out. So yeah, it does have a lower balance this year because we have to transfer money from that fund to the general fund. So the general fund needs minimum fund balance. With the minimum fund balance, I like to put it this way. Every expenditure that we have to have like 110% in revenue. So for instance, something that's skewing our minimum fund balance this year, that it wouldn't skew any other year if we didn't have it, is the lost revenue money. So we have, what, 6.5 million, I think, appropriated in the budget for this. So that means I have to set aside 650,000 extra
Okay.
to meet minimum fund balance. So I have to have 650 to offset that appropriation, but then I need another 650,000 to meet minimum fund balance.
Okay.
So that is, it's making us have to carry over a larger balance because we have to follow that policy that we have in place. So that's just, if it wasn't for that large expenditure, we wouldn't have to carry over as much and we wouldn't have to transfer as much to get the general fund to balance this year.
Okay.
Since we have to meet minimum fund balance to consider our budget balance. So my goal is, though, for that fund, doesn't specify when I have to do the transfer. As long as you guys pass the budget, it doesn't specify when I have to do the transfer. So with interest rates being up, that fund will not see a transfer until probably December of this year. As long as the general fund stays in the positive the whole year, I probably will not transfer anything into December, so I can collect every last cent of interest that we can to build up that fund as much as possible as well before doing that transfer.
Okay. Very wise.
Next question is page 124, Business Incentive Program. We put this program together to help incentivize businesses to expand or new businesses to move to town. And there's criteria for both. So we created this program a few years ago. So we budget money in case someone makes use of it. We try to use it, but it's up to the business. We can't force them to use it.
What would they use it for?
It's based on number of employees and payroll. So they would get money back based on that. There's a formula, and then they can use it for whatever they want.
If I was a business, how would I know about it?
Oh,
Is
we
it-
talked to them about it.
Oh, in that like meeting when you go
Yeah,
out?
so we do business visits with them. We talk to, it's not geared for retail businesses. You have to, I believe off the top of my head, the expansion or new jobs has to be a minimum of 10. And then you have to have a minimum of a certain amount of payroll. But it's not geared towards retail.
Okay.
Mayor,
Nonetheless,
sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Meriwether take advantage of that program when they expanded with the new sprinklers and
not
all
this
of that?
program.
Not that, okay.
Last question, page 149. So Mr. Shreve's going to help me with this. I think there's a couple questions in this one question.
So page
It's kinda how
149.
things work too.
So
Sorry, Todd.
page 149 is actually, so it's a utility fund,
Mm-hmm.
515 fund. It's actually our wastewater treatment plant.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not real sure. I think the $820,000 pipe, but again, I'm not real sure where that number, or what that number was, but I think it's the screw press that we actually talked about.
Well, I wrote.
But I don't remember what the actual,
It's a pipe that we need to replace, and we're getting the Ohio Public Works grant for.
well, so we're doing screw pumps, and we applied for OPWC. We're applying for 3 water line projects, but that's not going to be the 515 fund, which is not going to be on page 149.
That's where it becomes kind of a, if we don't get a grant, how do we,
Okay,
like, come
so
up
that's
with-
more, the question's more, what are we gonna do? So for example, Taylor Road. So Taylor Road was applied for in 2021, I believe. Taylor Road, we actually ended up not scoring high enough. So we took what we had applied for, looked at it and said, well, why? Why did we not score high enough? And we changed some numbers, we actually made the ask a little bit smaller, and I went to our consultant and said, whatever it takes, we are doing this job. So get me this money, okay? So we
Jackhammer up the road a little bit, make it
Well,
look worse.
we changed our ask, we changed the scope, we changed everything about that project so that we could score higher. There's a scoring matrix, so you can self-score. So we knew where we were at the year before. We knew the targeted number that got funded, so we just went back to the drawing board and said, hey, let's put this together so that we're gonna get funded. And so it's kind of a, I don't want to say trial and error because it's an educated trial and error, you know, but we try to go into it with intentions and plans to 50% of somebody else's money is better than 100% of our money.
Absolutely.
So,
What if it becomes like an emergency? Like, this sounds like an important pipe. So if it breaks before we.
well, so we had that happen when we were on Worcester Road North, up there, storm sewer. They were grinding the road down to do the paving. It was the ODOT job. That's why that one lane ended up not getting paved for so long, because we uncovered a storm sewer pipe. So there is also emergency funding out there that we can apply for. And again, that's why we have some of the reserves that we have. You know, Jeremy talked about rainy day fund. It's for instances like that so that we can cover those types of emergencies. Benny, did you have anything else?
Well, yeah, the 820 is for the screw pumps.
Okay.
They're return activated sludge.
Okay.
And we did submit that for OPWC. It was recommended by the Division 8 to the state. So we're waiting on them to come back and tell us that it is final. But we did get a recommendation from Division 8. So it's looking good.
Yeah. Yours just happened to be my example, because I wondered what happens if we don't get grants.
Well, and there's emergency loan funding out there too. That's low interest emergency loan. There's a lot of other options. I mean, all of them though in the end end up costing us some money. So if we can apply and get some grant funding, it's great to work
Like
that
I
way.
said, if we don't get them 1 year, we go back, we reevaluate, we apply. Sometimes the grants are only available once a year. So with Taylor Road, we went back, redid things, applied the next year, and we got it going last year, so.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you guys for explaining all
absolutely.
that. I don't have any more questions.
Since you're up there, you sent us an email today about the animal control fund. You said there were some initiatives that you're looking at. What are those?
Actually, off the top of my head. Let me go back, let me get the email back up here.
While he's pulling that up, I just wanted to say thank you to all of our department heads and Mr. Flaker for all of the work that you've put into this budget. I know that it's a long process, and we appreciate you taking the time to stand up here and explain things line by line if needed, and, you know, answer questions. So that's all.
Did I send that today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have the time?
Not right off the top of my head.
Maybe.
So I started sending emails about 5:20 this week.
Maybe it was. Yeah, that might have been it. Maybe one. Nah, yeah.
It did get lost in the shuffle
Because we asked about that, and you said you had some initiatives you were looking at.
Are you talking about the animals? I thought that was Friday.
Oh, maybe it was Friday. I don't know.
that was
We've had like 50,000 emails.
No, that was today. Because
So I don't know.
went to a few. He answered, and then you answered mine. That was today. Definitely.
Maybe it was Saturday.
Am I allowed to look at my phone?
Yeah, can we look at our emails?
Oh, just I meant with initiatives, just better marketing of the program
What program?
Thank you.
for the animal control. So
What-
if somebody traps an animal, they can take it up there and, at our cost. So, we've had there continues to be an issue with feral cats.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can either, if homeowner A is feeding cats and we get complaints, we can cite homeowner A and we go through this lengthy process. Or if they're coming in onto your property, you can take them up to the animal control division and, they can take care of them, put them up for adoption or what have you. And so we can either fix the problem or we can go through kind of this lengthy process.
Well, I just know that animal control is not very, very reliable when it comes to being called, I mean, if they're not there, if it's not during business hours, good luck.
Your reply was the 23rd at 3:58 if you want to look at for
There
it.
you go.
3:59 on the Saturday, the 23rd? Yep. Thank you. And, to your point, when they're called for a dangerous dog, they're the only organization, really the only organization. There's other smaller ones. There's no other city other than Akron that has their own animal control board. City of Barberton had one, but it's been
Many years.
25 years maybe. So we had looked at that, and I'm not sure what kind of revenue would be generated if we had our own animal control officer. So we can still take the animal up to Summit County, still have to pay for it, but we'd have to get an animal control approved vehicle. Someone would have to take the shots and then take the position. I believe that may still be in the AFSCME bargaining unit. That's where it was previously. So there's a lot of expense behind that. And Summit County, I believe, is one of the only county-owned animal control facilities that takes cats. It's the only one. Is it the only one? So we're dealing with that issue right now with more feral cats.
Right, because it's a big problem. So to back up just a little bit on that, if somebody has, a feral cat situation, they can trap them themselves. Like, they don't have to go. There was discussion about renting a trap from the Summit County for like $50, but it's a deposit when you take the cat or the animal and return the trap. But is it that you can just take this animal to them?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure
Yeah,
that
you
you
don't
don't
have
have
to
to
rent
first go
trap.
and get something if you've already got something.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And also, is this only if they have the room? Like, it's not like
Yes.
it's not like they have to take it. It's if they have the room. Okay.
And there's times when they're totally full.
Right, I understand.
During COVID, people were shut down or what have you. There was a spike in the adoption of animals. People went back to work. There was an adoption or a spike in number of animals running free. Right? So,
So if that citizen from Barberton calls them up or takes an animal there, and they just have to say, I'm from Barberton, and give a driver's license, or how?
I'm not sure what kind of identification they have to show, but they should mark it down and then send us an invoice.
And they send the city the invoice. You said, okay. Cool. Thank you.
And if there's no other questions, I know there are some questions concerning economic development, so I'd asked Insight, they're here, Rental is here. Insight has a presentation, if we can do that now.
Hi, Manny.
Okay. So I'll introduce Katie Breck from Insight Advisory Group.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council President and members of Council, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm Katie Breck. I'm Director of Economic Development for Insight Advisory Group, and we are proud to be the Economic Development Partner for the City of Barberton. Mayor Judge invited me to Council to introduce our group and answer any questions that you may have. Can we move to the next slide, please? We are Insight Advisory Group, a boutique regional economic and community development consulting firm that's based in the greater Akron area. We provide economic development consulting services to both municipalities and corporate clients, as well as owners representation services. Go to the next slide, please. Our president, Sean Joyce, is a CPA and proven executive leader in financial management and strategic development with over 20 years of experience in a leadership role with organizations from a multi-billion-dollar for-profit organization to nationally recognized nonprofits. Sean is a government relations expert and uses his expertise to secure millions of dollars in state and federal funding. I have more than 15 years of professional experience working in the public sector, and most recently worked for the City of Akron as the Director of Strategic Development. My relevant accomplishments include co-leading the Office of Integrated Development for the City of Akron, where I oversaw investment of federal funding into key capital projects and city initiatives, including the Akron Civic Commons, Lackery Park, and Summit Lake North Shore, the Akron Financial Empowerment Center, and the Small Business Relief Program. I also led the Akron's team entry into the Bloomberg Global Mayor's Challenge and established the Targeted Help for Resilient Innovative Entrepreneurs, also known as the Thrive Program, which attracted over $1.5 million in follow-on funding. Scott Harrington worked for more than 20 years for the largest chamber of commerce in the nation, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, and led their business retention and expansion efforts. While at GCP, in addition to project management, Harrington oversaw a BRE program that included 900 to 1,000 visits annually in an 8-county footprint and required coordination with not only local economic development directors, but representatives from regional and state economic development partners like Team Neo and Jobs Ohio. In addition to coordinating meetings that allowed employers to interact with multiple layers of economic development ecosystem simultaneously, he elevated the level of post-BRE follow-up on referrals to add value of the visits for businesses. Move to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, and as you know, Insight is proud to be the City of Barberton's Community and Economic Development Partner. We created the BRE program to connect the mayor to the businesses within the community. When B&W shared with the city that they were considering taking 700 jobs to Akron, it was Insight that advocated for Barberton. And when they ultimately announced that they were leaving, Insight helped the city to strategize on how best to mitigate the fallout. Additional accomplishments, since this typeface is a little small, so you probably can't read it. We presented at the 2019 CFDA conference in Tampa, Florida, attracted the company Eurofins, 114 new jobs to the city of Barberton without incentives, helped the mayor launch the Barberton Forward Neighborhoods First initiative, planned events for the annual Manufacturing Month, partnered with businesses and the Barberton City Schools to promote careers in manufacturing with the students, developed property card information for vacant commercial lots, and developed collateral and information packets for the annual Foreign Direct Investment Conference. Barberton continues to get favorable press coverage on its business-friendly environment, and we're very proud to be a part of those efforts. Our work in Barberton continues. Can you move to the next slide, please? And is centered around the city helping reimagine its downtown. We continue to implement the BRE work, but we're also leveraging our expertise in securing funding and helping to make connections to solve our clients' issues. We are leveraging our deep relationships with the Governor's Office and the Ohio Department of Development to help position Barberton to be in the receiving line when it comes to more than $1 billion in state funding specifically for economic development. Governor DeWine has made an unprecedented level of investment available for economic development, and we want to be sure that we're ready to compete for these opportunities. We are part of the leadership team driving the Downtown Barberton strategy along with the Barberton Community Foundation, BCDC, Main Street Barberton, the city, and the business community. We help the city design a program to address structural repairs by connecting property owners with flexible capital through the Western Reserve Community Fund. As Barberton's economic development team, we created and continue to implement the Business Retention and Expansion Program. So far this year, we've conducted 9 BRE meetings and have slots to fill for the month of April. These visits help us build trust with local companies and the community and be a resource for them. Here are a couple of examples of what we've encountered through these visits. A company called a week after a routine BRE visit saying, "You said to call if I need help, then I need help." They had a specific challenge with an electrical upgrade that if it was not done in a timely fashion would cause them to miss a window for installation of an important piece of equipment they purchased and set their production back 6 weeks. Insight took the lead and managed to get the issue addressed in time. The company is very happy and called the city to thank them for our efforts on their behalf. Outreach to a business with multiple locations in the region revealed that they were very unhappy with the local administration, to the extent that it cost the city an opportunity for a regional headquarters that they had not even been aware of. The regional president of the company didn't even want to meet, but Insight stepped in and set up a meeting with the key contact at the local level, and after a 30-minute meeting, the city was able to repair that relationship. As we shared with you, Insight is one member, and you can move to the next slide, please, of the economic development team here in Barberton, where we focus on the fundamentals in order to spur incremental growth. We are very excited about continuing our partnership with the City of Barberton. We are honored that Mayor Judge wishes to continue our partnership and look forward to the work that lies ahead. With over 55 years of combined experience, Sean, Scott, and I hope to continue the work we are doing to elevate Barberton's economic development efforts. I look forward to answering any questions that you may have at this time, and thank you for your time tonight. Sure.
Is it really just you three?
It is.
Nice.
We bring in other partners as required.
Huh?
We work with several consultants in the area, and whenever we need another partner with a different set of expertise, we bring them as well. We're also in the process of bringing on a fourth person. Great. Should be starting in the next few weeks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mrs. Gerhart was the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you possibly email that out? It was just kind of small from here. Thank you.
How much did you guys do compared to this year compared to last year?
As far as,
Well, we didn't hear much about you, and then all of a sudden now we're hearing a ton about you.
so I joined this company about roughly 11 months ago. And so I would need to look as far as VRE visits for past, but I believe that we had at least 10 to 12 visits from late summer to early fall. But that is our main lane within economic development is the business retention and expansion efforts for the city. We also pitch hit whenever there's an opportunity to use our skills. Like I assisted planning with putting together the Our Town NEA grant for the public arts plan. Whenever there's an opportunity to use our skills, we stand ready to help.
Yes, so you were talking about the $1 billion that is available from the state. Are you eyeing any new ones to go for, or are there plans to
Well, there was
reach
the
out?
All Ohio Futures Fund. All Ohio Futures Fund is the latest that was announced. They started accepting letters of intent, and it's about 1 year you have to apply. But that's for site development work, so that's one that we're reviewing.
How much is that one for?
That, I think the total was over 700 million.
We would be applying for $700 million, or?
No,
Like-
it's just for the entire state.
Right, but
For a slice of it.
yeah,
Now we're
so we would
talking.
just, they would kind of give what they think is necessary, or are you looking for an actual amount?
I don't know exactly what the average would be for an application, but it's to support site infrastructure. And those are, I think, in the form of a forgivable loan. Partially forgivable. Thank you, Jason.
Every program through the state or the feds is going to come with its own criteria, little nuances. And it's really getting into the weeds of everything to find out if your application really meets those requirements and how best to make it stand out from others. Because $750 million may seem like a lot of money, and it is, but statewide, there's a lot of people hungry out there. So that money's going to go quick.
Thank you. What other municipalities do you represent?
Currently, I work with the City of New Franklin and the City of Talmadge. We also have worked with the City of North Olmsted, the City of Conneaut,
Are there ever any contradictions? You said New Franklin, they're a neighbor of ours, that we're vying for the same thing. If that's the case, who do you represent?
That's a great question, and that has not come up in my time, only because New Franklin is in a very different position than the city of Barberton. Their main issue that they have asked for our assistance with is to help to secure funding for their sanitary sewer infrastructure. Currently, the city is unsewered, so in order to attract development, they would need to get sanitary sewer and water.
But with other cities not neighboring to us, if they do have the same interests, what happens there? You know, like you said, Olmsted, what if they're vying for something that we could use as well? How is that handled if you're talking about a $700 million state investment and everybody going for a slice of it? What if we want the same slice? What
That's
happens?
a great question, and unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you, only because it has not come up in my time with the company.
Thank you.
I'm looking at your, a statement of work here, description of services. Business representation and tax incentive negotiation for new and expanding businesses. Isn't that something that Retzel does? So we're duplicating, basically?
I would say we're duplicating efforts.
I mean,
We share information about the programs, and then Jason assists on the legal end for administering those programs.
And then I see here also where it says coordinate mayor's state of the city address. What do you guys do there?
We would provide talking points relevant to economic development to support the creation of that speech if called upon.
Okay. And on your slide, you showed a bunch of economic development groups. How do you work with them?
So I am the city's representative with Elevate Greater Akron, which is an initiative that's through the city of Akron, Summit County, and the Greater Akron Chamber. So I attend the BRE visits that are scheduled through Elevate, and when we have a business that's looking to expand, they may be interested in funding to support that expansion, so I would be the liaison between Team NEO as well as Jobs Ohio and speak to them about the different programs that are available through those organizations. As far as the last slide that I presented, that is our entire economic development ecosystem here in the city of Barberton. We are a coordinated team working towards incremental growth here in this community.
Who coordinates it all?
The mayor.
Okay.
So we have meetings, you know, we'll bring someone from every organization that was up there in, and we meet and discuss things. When we go on our BRE visits, if a business owner says, hey, I'm looking for a new piece of equipment, and maybe there's no funding from the feds or the state out there, then we can pass them along to BCDC for possible funding, or the foundation. We've actually had business owners who said, hey, my buddy's got a retail business, we'd love to meet downtown. Okay, we'll call Main Street and see if there's an opportunity, a vacant spot for them. So we all collaborate in different ways to better the community. And we do meet and share ideas and things of that nature.
How often do you meet?
Monthly. So we all meet together monthly. There's also a monthly meeting with BCDC, as I sit on the board. Councilwoman Gearhart sits on the board. The foundation has multiple meetings throughout the month. I meet weekly with the planning department and Insight. But that's an open meeting that BCDC, Retzel, Main Street, anybody can come to.
What about BCIC?
So I do not put BCIC on the one form because I'm not asking council to allocate any funds for that. So their main purpose, we meet monthly. The main purpose of that is to develop land or acquire land and get it ready for development. So BCDC owns property or buildings that they lease out, so they have a revenue stream, right? They also work with the EDA and SBA loans to give out loan money for equipment or for business needs. Foundation has kind of dipped their toes in the economic development the last few years, and they provide money for building upgrades and things of that nature. Same with the city, with the CDG and some other funds that we have. The BCIC really fits that niche of acquiring land or property and getting it ready for rehab. So we acquired the former Dutch Cafe and the house next to it, demoed it, remediated the site, sold, there's 5 lots there, different sizes. So we sold some of the lots to Lenny's Collision Center, who wanted to buy it for additional parking for the employees. We're in negotiations to sell the other 3 lots. So that's one example. Would have just kept sitting there.
How is CIC funded then in order to get this land?
So initially, it was funded through ARPA funds through City Council. And so money went to ARPA, or to CIC,
How much, do you remember?
$250,000, I believe.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes. Can you give examples of like what kinds of questions you ask the businesses when you go for the business meeting?
Sure, so really we sit down with them and just ask how things are going. We like to know information about what are their workforce development challenges, if they have any. A lot of companies report that they have difficulty finding workers at this time. So we try to provide connections to the different workforce training dollars that are out there to help them at least like recoup some of the costs when they're looking to fill positions. Really just getting to know their products, how long, what's their history in town. Those are all things that we like to know and how we can help, like if there's anything that we can do for them.
Okay. Very neat.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Breck? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on.
Counselor?
Yep.
Are we gonna hear from
Sorry.
Retzel Consulting?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
I think you might want to ask the president that.
This is her
It's my committee.
We are live. It looks like.
All right, we're back here. We have another presentation this evening. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Just keep in mind, I'm the second of three, so there's still one more.
Go on.
All right. My name is Jason Dodson. I'm the shareholder in charge of our Akron office with Rutsell and Andrus. I've been here with a few of you that have been on council for a while. I've been here for projects off and on, but obviously with 5 of you guys being new, I think that's right, count. Yeah. There's a number of you that I've either only met very briefly or have not had a chance to meet at all yet, even some of you this evening here. So I've been with Rutsell now for about 4.5 years, been working with the city for 3 or 3.5 years now. And before I joined Rutsell, I was the chief of staff for the Summit County executive, both the current county executive and then the prior county executive going back for 12 years. So I took that job in 2008. And that really gave me, I think, a lot of the underpinning for kind of what I do now in the realm of economic development. So my practice, real quickly, and then I'll talk a little bit more about Rutsell and what we do here at the city. So my practice primarily focuses around real estate, public law, and development-related work. I do have a number of nonprofit clients I represent, a number of for-profit clients I represent. I always like to tell people I'm the general counsel for the company that makes Hamburger Helper, oddly enough. But the primary focus of my work is going to be on local economic development stuff, representing both local political subdivisions as well as a number of developers here in Northeast Ohio and throughout Ohio, and also represent a couple universities as part of my practice as well on kind of complex real estate related matters. And so our Rutsell Andrus has been in Akron for north of 150 years now. Within Northeast Ohio, we have one of the most robust public law practices, which kind of combines with public law, public finance, so your bond projects. It also merges a little bit with your economic development law. So you guys have probably heard TIFs, you've heard CRAs, you've heard about development agreements and things like that. And we're kind of the firm here, at least in this area, of choice for that type of work. And we also have an entity called Rutsell Consulting Solutions then that does a lot of kind of the advising that goes behind a number of those projects. So let me kind of get into what that means a little bit then for the city of Barberton. So Katie, when she was up here, talked about how Insight takes the lead on the business retention and expansion work. So they're kind of the ones who go out and have that initial meeting with the businesses. The question then happens is after they meet with the business and the business says, I want to do an expansion or I want to buy equipment, then the question becomes, what do we do at that point in time? And so myself, on behalf of the city, along with a number of the local economic development partners. So Team NEO is kind of our gateway up to Jobs Ohio money, as is the Greater Akron Chamber. The county's going to have money that they can put in incentives. And then we have a number of other different organizations, from local ones here, BCDC and the Foundation, all the way up through probably something you all have never heard of before, which is the Akron Summit County Energy Special Improvement District that actually provides financing for energy-related improvements for a business. So when we either get contacted directly by a business, we being collectively the city, or Insight when they go and meet with a business and find out that there's kind of what we call a business need or a potential project there. One of my roles with the city is to help put that kind of package together for that business. So we get a meeting together, we get all of those different actors in the room, or mostly virtually now at this point in time because it's just easier with everybody scattered around. And we ultimately say, what piece of this project can everybody fund? So typically Team NEO is going to play from like an equipment role, or they're going to play with some sort of discretionary grant or small grant that they call it the inclusion grant that's going to be available here in town. The county is typically going to put in workforce dollars on a project.
Here locally, we're going to put anything from a TIF or a CRA, which a CRA is a property tax abatement. A TIF is similar to a CRA, except for with the TIF, it's an exemption of the real property taxes, layered with a service payment that's the same amount of those taxes, and you then pull that service payment out and can fund infrastructure related to the project, infrastructure that benefits the property, and in some situations, you can actually use that service payment revenue from the TIF to do the improvement itself to the building or the other vertical construction pieces that you may do. And so we kind of put all of that together, bring everybody together, put the offer letter together. One of my roles in terms of the TIF and the CRA is that we'll actually do the financial analysis that sits behind what we would offer the company. So we might say, you're going to invest $10 million, that's going to calculate out to about $9 million in terms of valuation. Based on these millage rates, that's going to generate a tax amount of X. We're going to give an abatement of Y or an exemption of Y. And then that's going to lead to a certain dollar amount that each year when they pay their taxes is going to be able to go back into that structure and either fund infrastructure or fund the vertical improvement for the business. And so that's kind of the work we do behind the scenes. And then as the mayor had indicated, in the event that project moves forward, and this would be a good example with the Powell and Herald buildings, which the other folks are here for the discussion later on. We'll put together then the development agreement. I believe the folks are downstairs for later on. We'll put together the development agreement that'll go with that. The TIF ordinance and legislation will file everything with the county, everything with the state that has to be filed for the different incentives that may be tied to a package. So that's really kind of our role that we serve in one function here with the city. The other function that we play is kind of just working with the mayor and the planning commission and the mayor's staff on just different projects that may be more what folks would consider like a city-related project. So we've been pretty involved in putting together the financial modeling behind the Justice Center and the new City Hall project that some of you had talked about towards the end of last year. Some of you, I think there's probably still some information that needs to be provided about where that project sits right now. But we've been working on that project for about a year and a half. I think we've probably run 2 or 3 dozen different financial models. We've had hours upon hours of discussions and negotiations with everyone from the courts to the different office holders that would benefit from that project to the foundation. Worked with the architect in order to put together preliminary renderings and help price those out. Met with potential contractors and construction managers to help get costs for that project, and ultimately boil that into a sources and uses document so we know what the project is going to cost and what the sources of money are going to be. And then from there, we've been working on chasing those sources of money. And we have some identified, and there's still a gap there, and we're continuing to work through that gap. And hopefully this year we'll be able to continue to make good progress on that project. It's something that I think since, was it 1957 was the first letter saying that the City Hall facilities were insufficient, and we're still kind of cracking away at that project. So with that, a couple other things that we do, and I'll kind of pivot to call it state money. As Katie indicated, there's kind of money that routinely comes up every year at the state level, and then there's kind of what I'll call one-time investment money that's been put together, primarily because of just really positive sales tax numbers, other revenue numbers at the state level, but also because of the ARPA money that all of local government and state government has received. And so with that safety building project, one of the things that we had tentatively gotten is $1 million earmark through one-time community money down at the state level. So we help actually put that application together, go advocate for that application with, unfortunately, we did not have a state representative at the time, so we got a hold of Representative Golonsky before she became clerk of the courts, got a hold of Representative Romer, and helped advocate for that project with them. We now are then going to do the same thing on the Senate side in terms of putting the application together, putting letters of support together, getting all those down to Senator Rogner, and then presumably, hopefully, meeting with Senator Rogner and pushing that project there as well. I'm not going to get into where Columbus is in terms of does the House have control over that, does the Senate, are they sharing it? But ultimately, we've got $1 million in the House. Depending on who you ask for, that means we have $1 million, and depending on who you ask, that means you're starting at ground zero and the Senate's calling all the shots. So I feel relatively comfortable based on our competing projects that are out there right now, that we are in a good position to at least get some funding from that money. The problem is when you've got a $30 million project, you've got $10 million of identified resources, you've got $20 million that you either need to find other resources for or you need to pay on a loan for 20 or 25 years. And so while I think we may get $1 million, a couple million for it, we still have a lot of work to do on that project. But that would be an example there. Another example of what we do. So if you look at the $24 million of demolition money that the county submitted under the state demolition program, our firm handled the applications for 18 of the 24 million that came out of Summit County. And that's myself and 2 other lawyers at the firm. And that includes the Masonic Temple application that went down, which would again be tied to that project. And then the other piece that I want to just talk about with the state before I switch over to the federal level is we work very closely with Insight and, again, Team NEO. That's really kind of the window to those state resources at Jobs Ohio. So when you hear Katie talk about the All Ohio Futures Fund, what we've managed to do over the last few years is build a good relationship with Team NEO so that when resources become available, they call us and say, hey, you've got Newell Street, what can we do to help put money into that project? And we've been working with them pretty diligently on Newell Street. Not everybody knows this, but that's the largest piece of developable land left in the city that's actually zoned commercial. And so, from our perspective, it was a pretty important task to go get that piece of property. So we worked with the foundation, put an MOU together. The foundation said we're willing to take a chance on this, and went out and spent $1.5 million to get it, which I think was really important to do that because now we have control of that site. We have put in and obtained TID funding, which is Transportation Improvement District funding, for $350,000 for the infrastructure on Newell Street and Norton Avenue in order to improve that. We also obtained last year $500,000 for the Worcester Road West project, which while it goes to Worcester Road West, really what it does is reduces the city's commitment on Worcester Road West, which enables the city then to put more into the infrastructure at Newell Street and Norton Avenue for that project. We are the first community that anybody in Northeast Ohio is aware of to get 2 TID funded projects in 1 year. And so we got that $850,000 in 2023. Keep in mind, until a couple years ago, the most you could get out of TID was $250,000 in a year. So I think between Mike and I, the people at the county ran it, and I think we've been involved with like 87% of the successful TID dollars that have flown into Summit County. Either Mike or I have played some role with that project. So I think we've got a real good team in terms of understanding the way the TID program works and bringing money back to the city for that program. Then the only other thing that I think I want to highlight is kind of the work we're doing for the city on the federal level. And so one thing that I'm not sure if you guys have heard about it in the last couple weeks, I know that there's been some press announcements about it, but we were able to receive 2 federal earmark requests through the federal government, or through the federal budget that was just approved a couple weeks ago. $1 million for renovations over at Lake Anna, and $700,000 for construction of sidewalks on roads that don't currently have a sidewalk, and kids have to walk in the roadway in order to get to school. And so last March, we would have put those federal earmark applications together, and And, kind of the way it works is Mike's kind of the technical brain, and I'm the guy who takes the technical side and puts it into the words that the federal government wants to hear when they want to fund a project. And we were able to get those, we got them submitted last March to Senator Brown and Congresswoman Sykes. Those were then funded when they just got through and kind of made the spending agreement. I think it was March 4th on a Sunday that they announced that those were all going to be funded. And then just this past Friday, we submitted a new federal earmark request for fiscal year 25, which if our federal government worked the way it should, would be passed by September 30th of this year, but there's no way in an election year that's going to happen, so it'll probably be this time next year by the time they get to that point. But we put in for, is it $1.1 million, Mike, for the water line and lead service line?
Until we asked for a $1.7 million.
And it's a 1.7, we asked for 1.1 for that. And then we also submitted, again, for the safety building and the criminal justice, we've submitted a few times for that project. We put in for $750,000 for equipment and technology specifically for the police department. We put in for a COPS grant. The federal government doesn't do a lot in terms of funding brick and mortar at all, other than national park and things like that. So you kind of have to go at it from a different angle, and one of those angles is to go in through the COPS grant and get funding through that route, which at the end of the day, it all comes off of that large price tag number, so we're kind of just trying to chip away at that. I think that's probably kind of the large pieces over the last year or so, and that's pretty indicative of the work we do year in and year out. And that changes a little bit depending on what the project is. Projects are, it changes a little bit in terms of what Insight brings back and says, hey, here's what the business needs. And quite frankly, it changes with who calls Team Neo and who calls the county and says, I want to move into this area. I guess one last thing is our firm and myself personally work with the county on the Elevate Greater Akron strategy. So the BRE effort that exists at the county level is my role with the county is to essentially run that operation both for the proactive BRE side as well as that project management side. So I can assure you that every single site selection request that comes through Team Neo, Jobs Ohio, the county, etc., passes through my email inbox, and if it fits for Barberton, we're going to put that project in. And I can tell you, Newell Street and Norton Commerce Park are probably they're two of the top three that get submitted all the time. And for those of you who don't know, the Norton Commerce Park, which is over where Eastern and where Clinton Aluminum is, the city of Barberton gets 30% of the income tax revenue from that for any business that locates there. So it's actually a good chunk of developable land in Norton that the city of Barberton benefits from as the water and sewer provider over there. And so, I can tell you we're putting out Newell Street on a weekly basis to multiple requests.
Thank you. You mentioned that you were in negotiations with the foundation, with the city building and municipal project and all that. Whatever became of those? Because when we asked for information, we sat here for 6 weeks before they showed up, but there was already a negotiation. Was that prior to that?
Yeah, so we had been going...
We had no idea.
Yeah, we had been going back and forth, essentially what I would call formal requests. Hey, what's going to be acceptable with you guys? I think the council president, I think you were in a couple meetings, or at least one meeting where we went and presented, had some discussions back and forth in terms of here's what the gap is in the project in terms of annual debt service. What can you guys afford? Here's what the city is looking to do. Here's what we'd like you to do. And really kind of went back and forth with the foundation. Those ultimately, I think, primarily through, legislation was introduced here at this level, and I don't know that the city and the foundation were kind of in similar mind at that point. And so I think everybody kind of backed away. They have brought Josh in, and we've not, restarted those discussions. But I would tell you for a better part of, 3 or 4 months, we were trying to figure out something that we could put in front of all of you guys and put in front of the board that would make sense for both organizations. So.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for taking probably 2 hours of your time to sit down and explain a lot of this to me last week. Very beneficial. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've been coming to public meetings since I was 20 years old. When I was at the county for 12 years, I went to every county council meeting. I was the county council liaison, and I'm the law director in Mogador and up in Northfield Center Township. So I'm used to being in these rooms on a Monday through Friday night.
Uh-huh. Well, we appreciate it. Were there any other questions, Mrs. Beck?
I have two. Sorry. Are you going? Oh. I have two questions, actually. So the federal earmarked money that you were talking about, the $700,000 for the sidewalks, is that the SRTS money? That's
Safe Routes to School.
Safe Routes to School. I guess you would know exactly. It's different. Okay, it's not the same thing.
Same general concept. It gets paid out of a different bucket of money. I cannot remember the life of me what subcommittee it comes out of or what agency it comes out of. But yeah, it will do the same thing, but it comes out of a different funding source.
So in addition to, because this roughly is about $730,000 that's getting picked up, that 90% of that project is getting picked up. So we'll have another $700,000 for more sidewalks somewhere else.
Yep.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's great. Also, so how many other cities, or is this like a normal thing that cities go with places like you guys,
Yeah.
consultants? Like that's pretty normal. Like this isn't something that's we've kind of invented the wheel here.
Yeah, so I mean, what I would tell you is that if you wound the clock back 20 years ago, I would tell you most communities of your size or similar size probably had more like, this is our person who's our economic development person. I would tell you now that you have a mixed bag. You have some communities have that staff person and some communities contracted out. And at least in this area, I don't know what the percentages are, but there's a decent number of communities who have consultants that do this.
That's what I was looking for. Sorry.
Yeah, which when I was at the county, and I remember one time the consultants would, the reality is whether you're, in this day and age, to have a good economic development person on staff, versus being able to bring the resources together, one or two different consultants who do this work and have the different connections we have, neither way is the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. I mean, I think it's just what works for each community.
Sure. I mean, I only know what happens on my speck of dust, so I don't know what happens other places, really.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did not bring business cards because I thought we were going to be, I didn't know I was doing this. I thought I was just going to be an executive session, but I'll shoot you guys an email so everybody's got my contact, and feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Continuing on, did you say wait?
No, I just making a sound. Sorry.
Continuing on with pending legislation, we've got ordinance number 27-2024, authorizing the mayor or designee to enter into a 3-year contract with OpenGov, a cloud-based budgeting and planning software, in the amount of $60,675. Are there any remarks? Ordinance number 28-2024, appropriation fire department, appropriating $408.83 from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department's operating budget. Are there any questions, comments, remarks from anywhere in the room? Hearing none. Is there any miscellaneous discussion for finance and personnel?
Not yet.
Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second? Sounds great. We are adjourned at 8:20 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That concludes our individual committee meetings for this evening. And now, without any objection, we just had a break. We'll just roll right into our regular legislative meeting.
Oh, sure.
Would like to state before we begin the regular legislative meeting that we do have an executive session at the very end of the regular legislative meeting. Once we go into executive session, there will be no more public discussion of business, and we'll immediately be adjourning once we come back from that session. So I know it's been a long night. Once we enter that session, public's welcome to stick around until afterwards, but we will only be adjourning. All right, so, we ready? All righty. Today is Monday, March 25th, 2020. They're ready, we're trying to push it. I'll slow it down a little bit. Today's Monday, March 25th, 2024. It is 8:21 p.m. I call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation by Mrs. Gerhardt.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share with your master's happiness. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for our ability to gather here today and the opportunity to serve our community. I pray for your blessing on each person on this council, on each member of our city leadership, on every employee, and on each resident. Bless and protect our safety departments. Lord, I ask for your abundance with our funds and resources. Let us be good stewards of what you have provided, and let us hear, well done, good and faithful servant. I ask these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Gerhardt.
You're welcome.
Clerk, please call the roll.
President Greer.
Present.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mrs. Thompson.
Here.
Mrs. Hager. Here. Mr. Cheatham.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mrs. Beck.
Here.
Ms. Gerhardt.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here. All right. Approval of the minutes. Look for approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, March 11th, 2024. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting from Monday, March 11th, 2024.
Thank you. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mr. Heidick's motion to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, March 11th, 2024.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, March 11th, 2024, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are adopted. We'll hop over into the finance report. Approval of the finance report for the month of February 2024 as presented. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of the finance report for the month of February 2024 as presented.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion on approval.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to approve the finance report for the month of February 2024 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Finance report is adopted. Petitions and claims.
We have that.
Matters requested.
We have all been dispersed.
Citizens addressing council. As of like 5 minutes ago, there were none. So, we're good. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Resolution number 26-2024, presented by Mrs. Beck. Title, Resolution ODOT Safe Route to School Grant 2024. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton authorizing the mayor to apply for the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for Safe Route to School, SRTS, infrastructure project funding and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend the rule. Thought I remembered, I'm sorry. I move that the rule is required. We're doing suspension. Rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Council, or charter, be suspended.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
I second her motion for suspension.
I think you read this.
Motion was made by Mrs. Beck and seconded by Mr. Harris to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Cheatham?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager? Yes. Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidig?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Ms. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that for the adoption of ordinance, or resolution, 26-2024.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mrs. Beck's motion to adopt.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Beck and seconded by Mr. Harris to adopt resolution number 26-2024. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidig?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 27-2024, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Enter into Contract, OpenGov. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a 3-year contract with OpenGov, a cloud-based budgeting and planning software in the amount of $60,675 and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Councilor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidig to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Sorry, I'm looking for a piece of paper. Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham?
Yes.
Mr. Heidig?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 27-2024.
Thank you. Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidig to adopt ordinance number 27-2024. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Heidig?
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 28-2024, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, Appropriation Fire Department. An ordinance appropriating $408.83 from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department's operating budget and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule is required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Councilor Thompson's motion on suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidig to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mr. Heidig?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 28-2024.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adopt.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 28-2024. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
Ordinance number 29-2024, presented by Mr. Griffin. Title, enter into contract Hydrostop LLC. An ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Hydrostop LLC in the amount of $108,518.83 for the procurement of valve insertion equipment and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend. Mr. Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Yes, I'd like to second Mr. Griffin's motion for suspension.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and seconded by Mrs. Hager to suspend the rule as required by section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Motion for suspension carries. Motion to adopt. Mr. Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the adoption of ordinance number 29-2024.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hager?
Yes, I'd like to second Mr. Griffin's motion for adoption of ordinance number 29-2024.
Thank you. A motion was made by Mr. Griffin and seconded by Mrs. Hager to adopt ordinance number 29-2024. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Cheatham.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Motion for adoption carries.
This ends the first reading.
Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
We have none.
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 14-2024, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, 2024 Operating and Capital Budget. An ordinance adopting a budget for various funds for the city of Barberton for the period beginning January 1st, 2024, and providing for the administration thereof and declaring it an emergency. This is the third reading. The first reading was on Monday, February 26th, and the second reading was on Monday, March 11th.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption.
One sec.
Isn't this as amended? Didn't we amend?
It was amended once.
Yes.
Should
Sorry.
read as amended.
Just say as amended. Yep. Committee's tracking the amendment.
All right.
Good catch. Thank you, Counselor.
Yep. As amended, February 26, 2024.
Wait, it needs to be read as
be read
amended.
again.
Sorry.
Yes.
Counselor
I'm
Clerk.
just saying for
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
so she has the date.
Ordinance number 14-2024, presented by Mrs. Thompson. Title, 2024 Operating and Capital Budget. An ordinance adopting a budget for various funds of the city of Barberton for the period beginning January 1st, 2024, and providing for the administration thereof and declaring it an emergency as amended February 26, 2024.
Thank you. Motion to adopt. Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 14-2024.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second Counselor Thompson's motion on suspension,
Adoption.
or adoption.
Habits.
I catch one and lose the other.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Motion was made by Mrs. Thompson and seconded by Mr. Heidick to adopt ordinance number 14-2024. Are there any remarks? Mr. Harris?
I will be voting no this evening, based on my talk here a few weeks ago about spending money on needs versus wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Mr. President. We as legislators do have the ability to offer amendments, and if there is any disagreement, I would think now would be the time to motion for one. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Remarks? I just want to say thank you to the department heads. I've been here, this is my second year as president, and I've seen a lot more presentation and information is provided to council, and as a council person, I definitely appreciate it, and as the council president, I really, really appreciate it, especially with the new council. Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hager?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Beck?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Mr. Cheatham?
Yes. Motion for adoption carries with 1 nay.
This ends the third readings.
Appointments.
For the Barberton Parks and Recreation Commission, Ms. Cynthia Sutton, for a 5-year term beginning immediately and ending December 31st, 2028.
Okay, so is there a motion? Who does that fall on? That was Mr. Cheatham, right? Okay. Is there a motion to appoint Mrs. Cynthia Sutton?
Yes, I make a motion that Cindy Sutton be put in the Parks and Recreation Commission.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that appointment.
All right, a motion was made by Mr. Cheatham and seconded by Ms. Gerhart to appoint Ms. Cynthia Sutton for a 5-year term beginning immediately and ending 12/31/2028. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, Mrs. Sutton is now appointed to the Barberton Parks Recreation Commission. Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Anything from the body? Anything from department heads? I do have something here. Just want to remind everybody that there'll be no council meeting April 8th. The city building is essentially closed, correct, Mayor? The city building's not closed, but the service...
The courts are still.
Correct, okay. So that will be due to the eclipse, so we just moved that to the 5th Monday, so there will be no council on April 8th. I just want to wish everybody a happy Easter, and there was one thing that I cannot remember. It happens more now than ever, but anyways.
Easter's coming?
Huh?
What do you mean, Easter? You got Easter?
No. I had one more thing. I have a dash on my list and nothing after it.
Oh, okay.
But I remember writing it. Oh, this could be good. No, there's not. Anyways, is there anything? Just double checking for the department heads. Just a quick reminder: there will be an executive session after the communication from the mayor. So we'll just hop over to communication from the mayor.
Yeah, that week.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank everyone who attended the Change event this last Friday. Collected over $570 with our Barberton band boosters. Met with Metro RTA last week. They're finishing up some of their plans on feasibility study plans and continuing to work on their new facility on Kenmore Boulevard. We talk about ridership. We talk about changing routes or helping businesses to get employees to and from work with different shifts. So more discussions on that here in the future. Had the pleasure of providing 2 proclamations to two residents who turn 100 years old next week. Always a pleasure to celebrate residents who turn 100 years young. This was number 2 and number 3 for this year. So we average about 1 a year, and all 3 live at the same facility. So it was a great time. Construction on South Van Buren, Worcester Road West, those continue. Worcester Road North started back up with lane changes as the project commences here, so please be cognizant of that. Issue came up the other week, and I've been working with Norton administration on this. You may have heard there's a parcel of land in Norton near Barberton. It's going through the process of there's a request to have it rezoned. Currently, it's light industrial. They want to rezone it to heavy industrial. There was a public meeting last Monday in Norton. But like I said, I'm staying in contact with their leadership team as this moves forward. Obviously, it's in Norton, but it's very, very close to Barberton. So, we want to make sure that our input is heard and that it's going through the proper process. And if you have questions, please let me know. And I think it's expected for vote on April 1st, next week. So I'll let you know if I hear anything in the meantime. Appreciate the passage of the budget. If there's questions moving forward, please contact me or your department head. And I realize this has been a lot been thrown at you in a short amount of time. If there's a question about needs and wants, please reach out. We can clarify that for you and make sure that everyone's on the same page, because there's what may seem like a want is really a need. And you got to look at the big picture, right? So we can do that for you. Other than that, happy Easter to everybody, and appreciate your these long council meetings over the last few weeks. But I know there's going to be questions here in the future, so please feel free to reach out.
I thought I maybe heard something with RTA's going to clean up their bus stops around here.
It's going to do what?
Clean up their bus stops.
So we're working with on an MOU with them on that.
MOU.
Real quick, Mayor.
With the MOU, I'm just hearing about this. With the MOU and RTA, is that an MOU that Barberton will be cleaning that up? And that we understand they're doing it, or?
They have a memorandum of understanding with other communities. I have not seen a draft of it yet, so they're going to get us one, so I'm not sure exactly what it's going to entail or how it's going to be broken down.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep. All right, thank you.
All right, I would say with nothing else, but we're not over, at least council. All right. A request has been made by Mayor William Judge to enter into executive session to consider matters requested to be kept confidential. Having stated this request, I will enter a motion to enter into executive session of council. Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to enter into executive session for the aforementioned purpose.
Thank you. And is Mrs. Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll second Mr. Heidick's motion to enter into executive session.
Thank you. It was moved by Mr. Heidick and seconded by Mrs. Thompson to enter into executive session to consider matters required to be kept confidential. Clerk, please call the roll.
President Kerr.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
Mrs. Hager. Yes. Mr. Cheatham.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mrs. Beck.
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes. Thank you. We are now in executive session at 8:43 p.m. I request that all persons not involved in